I thought I'd buried that night forever. The blood, the flatline, the wife screaming in the hallway. 3 years of silence, then she walks through my apartment building like a ghost made flesh. Ava Collins. I recognized her before she even said her name, and when she smiled at me in the lobby, all polite introductions and coincidental timing, I knew exactly what this was. She hadn't moved in next door by accident. She'd come hunting for answers about the husband I couldn't save. The question was, did she want the truth or did she want revenge? If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The first time I saw Ava Collins after that night, she was carrying a potted fern up the stairs. I was coming down with trash bags, half asleep after a double shift, and nearly walked into her on the second-floor landing. She stepped aside, murmuring an apology, and I got a full look at her face in the hallway's dim fluorescent glow. My stomach dropped. I knew that face. The shape of her eyes, the way her mouth tightened when she was trying not to cry. I'd seen it 3 years ago under the brutal lights of the emergency room, twisted in anguish, screaming at me to do something, to save him, to not let him die. I'd failed. She didn't seem to recognize me, just smiled politely, adjusted her grip on the fern, and continued up the stairs. I stood there with garbage bags cutting into my palms, heart hammering, until the sound of her door closing snapped me back. Then I took the stairs 2 at a time down to the dumpster, threw everything in, and stood in the parking lot trying to convince myself I was wrong. It couldn't be her. Boston was a big city. People moved around. Coincidences happened. Except I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. I didn't sleep that night. My daughter Maya was at her grandmother's, my ex-wife's mother, who took her every other weekend so I could catch up on the sleep I never actually caught up on. So the apartment was too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and tried to remember exactly what Ava Collins had looked like that night. Younger, obviously. Her hair had been longer, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd been wearing jeans and a hospital visitor sticker on her jacket. Her husband had been brought in after a motorcycle accident. Critical trauma, internal bleeding, we couldn't stop fast enough. I remembered his name. Daniel Collins. 29 years old, organ donor. Time of death. 11:47 p.m. I remembered the way she'd looked at me when I came out to tell her, like I'd personally taken something from her. And now she was living 1 floor above me. I pulled up the building's tenant roster on my phone, technically a violation of privacy, but our landlord was sloppy with security and I still had access from when I'd helped him set up the online portal last year. Sure enough, there she was. Ava Collins, 3B, lease signed 2 weeks ago, right above my apartment, right above my daughter's bedroom. I closed the browser and sat there staring at nothing until the sun came up. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. I poured it down the sink, made a fresh pot, and spent the next 3 hours doing what I always did when I couldn't sleep, reading medical journals and second-guessing every decision I'd made in the last 5 years. At 6 in the morning, I gave up and took a shower. The hot water did nothing to ease the knot in my shoulders. I kept seeing Ava's face in that hallway, the polite smile, the way she'd looked at me like I was just another neighbor, like she didn't know who I was. But she had to know. People didn't just randomly move into the same building as the doctor who'd failed to save their husband. That wasn't how the world worked. I needed to think this through logically. There were only a few possibilities. One, it actually was a coincidence, and she genuinely didn't recognize me. Unlikely, but not impossible. 3 years was a long time. People changed. I'd grown a beard since then, put on maybe 15 pounds. Trauma could blur memories. 2, she recognized me and was building up to something. A confrontation. A lawsuit maybe, though the hospital had already settled. Or just answers. Closure. Whatever the hell that meant. 3, something worse that I couldn't even imagine yet. I was still running through scenarios when my phone buzzed with a text from Maya's grandmother. She wants pancakes for breakfast. Your daughter eats like a linebacker. I smiled despite myself and texted back. She gets that from you. Don't blame me for your genetics, Noah. The exchange was mundane, normal, exactly what I needed. Maya was fine. My life was fine. One woman moving into my building didn't have to mean anything, except it did. And I knew it. She appeared again on Monday morning. I was walking Maya to the bus stop, her hand sticky in mine from the syrup she'd gotten all over her waffles despite my best efforts. She was chattering about something her friend Lily had said at school, half skipping to keep up with my longer strides, when a voice called out behind us. "Excuse me!" I turned. Ava was jogging down the sidewalk, wearing yoga pants and a loose sweatshirt, hair pulled into a ponytail. She looked breathless, friendly, completely harmless. "Hey, sorry," she said, stopping a few feet away. "I just moved into 3B and I'm still getting my bearings. Is there a coffee place nearby that's decent?" Maya looked up at her with open curiosity. I felt my hand tighten around my daughter's. "There's a Starbucks 2 blocks that way," I said, nodding east, "and a local place called Brew on the corner of Maple, if you want something less corporate." "Brew," Ava repeated, smiling. "That sounds perfect. Thanks." She glanced down at Maya. "And who's this?" "I'm Maya," my daughter announced before I could intervene. "I'm 6 3/4. 6 3/4, Ava said seriously. "That's a very important age." Maya beamed. I tugged her gently forward. "Bus stop," I said. "We're late." "Of course," Ava said, stepping back. "Thanks again." She waved as we walked away. Maya waved back enthusiastically. I didn't. "She seems nice," Maya said as we reached the corner. "Is she your friend?" "No, honey, just a neighbor." "Oh." Maya thought about this for a moment. "Can I be friends with her?" "Let's just see how it goes," I said, which was my standard response when I wanted to say no but didn't want to explain why. The bus arrived. I kissed Maya's forehead, watched her climb aboard, and stood on the sidewalk until it disappeared around the corner. Then I turned and saw Ava still standing where we'd left her, watching me. Our eyes met across the distance. She didn't wave this time. Neither did I. I went to work and tried to focus on anything else. The ER was busy, which was both a blessing and a curse. Blessing because it kept my mind occupied. Curse because every patient with traumatic injuries made me think of Daniel Collins, the motorcycle accident victim in Bay 3, the construction worker in Bay 7, the teenager who'd wrapped his car around a telephone pole. I saved 2 of them, lost 1. The odds were better than they'd been 3 years ago, but it didn't make the losses any easier. "You okay?" Rachel Kim asked during a rare quiet moment in the break room. She was finishing her shift. I was just starting mine. We overlapped for about an hour every Monday. "Fine," I said. "You look like hell." "Thanks, Rachel. You always know what to say." She poured herself coffee and sat down across from me. "Seriously, what's going on?" I considered lying. Rachel was a good doctor and a decent friend, but we weren't close enough for me to unload about Ava. Then again, Rachel had been there that night. She'd called time of death while I'd stood there with my hand still on Daniel Collins' chest, knowing CPR was pointless, but not able to stop. "His widow moved into my building," I said quietly. Rachel's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Ava Collins, apartment 3B, right above mine." "Jesus, Noah." She set the cup down carefully. "When?" "I saw her for the first time 3 days ago. She's been there at least 2 weeks based on her lease." "And she hasn't said anything? Hasn't confronted you?" "She's pretending we've never met." Rachel's expression shifted from concern to something harder. "That's deliberate. She knows who you are." "Yeah." "So what's her game?" "I have no idea." "You need to be careful," Rachel said. "Document everything, every interaction. If she's building up to something—" "I know," I interrupted. "But what am I supposed to do? Get a restraining order against someone who hasn't actually done anything?" "Has she threatened you?" "No, she asked me where to get coffee." Rachel didn't laugh. "This isn't funny, Noah. You went through hell after that case. The review board, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks. You almost quit." "I'm not quitting. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you need to protect yourself." "And Maya." The mention of my daughter made something cold settle in my gut. I hadn't thought about it from that angle. Ava had talked to Maya, smiled at her, asked her name. "She wouldn't hurt a kid," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "You don't know that," Rachel replied. "You don't know anything about her except that she blames you for her husband's death." The review cleared me. Grief doesn't care about reviews. She was right. I knew she was right. But the idea of getting lawyers involved, of turning this into some official confrontation, felt wrong. Ava hadn't done anything threatening. She just moved into my building and asked about coffee. Except that wasn't all she'd done. She'd talked to my daughter, she'd positioned herself in my life. And she was lying about recognizing me, which meant she had a plan. I just didn't know what it was yet. That night, I did something I wasn't proud of. I looked her up. Social media first, which gave me nothing. Her profiles were locked down tight, barely even a profile picture visible. Then I tried a basic people search site, the kind that aggregates public records. That gave me a few breadcrumbs. Previous address in Cambridge, employment history showing she'd worked as a paralegal until about a year ago, then nothing recent. And a marriage certificate filed 4 years ago. Ava Reyes to Daniel Collins. Reyes. I hadn't remembered her maiden name. I kept digging, feeling more uncomfortable with every click until I found an obituary for Daniel. It was brief, formal, no real details. Survived by his wife, Ava. No mention of the accident, just a request for donations to a motorcycle safety nonprofit in lieu of flowers. The nonprofit had a website. I clicked through, found a memorial page. There were photos of Daniel, young, smiling, alive, wearing a leather jacket and standing next to a Ducati. In another photo, he had his arm around Ava. They looked happy. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to Maya's white noise machine hum through her cracked bedroom door. This wasn't random. She'd found me somehow, looked me up, tracked me down, moved into my building. The question was why? Was she planning to confront me? Sue me? The hospital had already settled with her. I knew that much from the legal paperwork I'd been asked to review afterward. There'd been no malpractice case, no formal complaint. The investigation had cleared me and the entire team. But that didn't mean she wasn't angry. It didn't mean she'd forgiven anything. And it didn't explain why she was pretending not to know who I was. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out what she wanted before she made her move. Or maybe I needed to make the first move myself. Confront her. Ask her directly what she was doing here. But every time I considered it, I thought about the way she'd smiled at Maya. The casual friendliness. The complete lack of hostility. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she really didn't recognize me. I didn't believe that for a second. The encounters became a pattern. Tuesday morning, she was in the lobby checking her mail when I came down with Maya. She smiled, said good morning, asked if Maya liked her school. My daughter, friendly to a fault, told her all about her teacher and the class hamster and how they were learning about fractions. I stood there, polite but distant, waiting for the conversation to end. Wednesday evening, I ran into her on the stairs. She was carrying groceries, struggling with a bag that was splitting at the bottom. I helped her carry it up to her apartment, stood awkwardly in her doorway while she thanked me and offered coffee. I said I had to get back to Maya. Thursday, she knocked on my door to ask if I had a can opener. Hers had broken and she was trying to make soup. I gave her mine and told her to keep it. Friday night, she showed up at the building's communal courtyard while Maya was playing on the swing set. Sat on the bench nearby, reading a book, glancing up every few minutes to watch my daughter with a faint, sad smile. I watched Ava watching Maya and felt something coil tight in my chest. By Saturday, I'd had enough. I took Maya to her grandmother's early, claiming I had errands to run. Then I came back to the building and waited. Ava's car was in the lot, a silver Honda Civic with a parking permit from her previous building still stuck to the windshield. She was home. I was about to go knock on her door when she appeared in the hallway carrying a yoga mat. "Hey," she said, looking almost sheepish. "Heading to a class. You need something?" "No," I said. "Just wanted to say hi." She studied me for a moment and I saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition. Calculation. "You sure?" she asked. "You look like you want to say something." I did. I wanted to ask her why she was really here, what she wanted from me, why she was lying. But standing there in the hallway with her looking at me with those careful eyes, I couldn't find the words. "Just wanted to welcome you to the building," I said finally. "Officially." "That's sweet." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks." She walked past me toward the stairs, and I caught a faint scent of lavender. It made my chest tighten for reasons I couldn't explain. "Ava?" I called after her. She turned. "Have we met before?" The question hung in the air between us. I watched her face carefully, looking for any sign that she was about to drop the act. Instead, she tilted her head, seeming to genuinely consider it. "I don't think so," she said. "Why? You look familiar." I get that sometimes, she shrugged. I guess I have one of those faces. Yeah, I said. Maybe. She left. I stood there in the empty hallway, more confused than ever. Either she was an incredible liar, or I was losing my mind. On Saturday, I took Maya to her grandmother's and came back to find Ava standing outside my door. Hey, she said, looking almost sheepish. I'm locked out. Called the landlord, but he's not answering. I looked at her, then at her empty hands. No phone? Dead battery, she said, holding it up. The screen was black. I feel like an idiot. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to make an excuse, to get inside and lock the door. But she looked genuinely embarrassed, shifting her weight from foot to foot, and I couldn't think of a reason to say no that wouldn't sound paranoid. Come in, I said finally, unlocking my door. You can use my charger. Thank you so much. She followed me inside, glancing around at the space, lived in, cluttered with Maya's toys and my medical journals, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. You have a really nice place. It's a mess, I said automatically. I found a charging cable and handed it to her. Outlets by the couch. She plugged in her phone and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. I stayed standing by the kitchen counter, keeping distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the distant sound of traffic outside, my own heartbeat too loud in my ears. You're a doctor, right? She asked suddenly. I froze. What makes you say that? She gestured toward the stack of journals. JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine. Either you're a doctor or you have very specific reading tastes. ER physician, I said carefully. That must be intense. She looked at me with something I couldn't quite read in her expression. I don't think I could handle it. Seeing people at their worst, I mean. You get used to it, I said, which was a lie. You never got used to it. You just learned to compartmentalize. Do you ever think about them? She asked. The patients, after your shift ends. The question landed like a punch. I kept my face neutral. Sometimes, I said, the ones who don't make it, she pressed. And now there was an edge to her voice, something harder underneath the casual tone. Do you remember them? My pulse kicked up. I met her eyes and saw it. Recognition, calculation, something deliberate in the way she was looking at me. She knew. She'd known the whole time. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, unplugged it quickly. Landlord's on his way. I should go wait downstairs. She stood, smoothed her shirt, and walked to the door. Paused with her hand on the knob. Thank you for this, she said quietly. You didn't have to help me. Then she was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, trying to decide if that had been a test. My phone rang. It was Rachel. Just checking in, she said without preamble. Any more incidents? She was just in my apartment. What? Rachel's voice sharpened. Why? I explained about the dead phone, the charger, the conversation. When I finished, Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Noah, she's playing you. I know. Then why did you let her in? Because saying no would have confirmed that I know something's wrong. Right now, I'm just a helpful neighbor. You're a target, Rachel corrected, and she's circling. So what do I do? Confront her. Ask her directly what she wants. Don't let her control the narrative. And if she denies it, then you know she's lying, and you have grounds to protect yourself. Rachel was right, but the idea of forcing a confrontation made my stomach turn. Because what if I was wrong? What if this really was all coincidence, and I was about to accuse a grieving widow of stalking me? I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. This doesn't end well if you wait. We hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling, knowing Ava was directly above me, probably thinking whatever she was thinking, planning whatever she was planning, and I had no idea what came next. Maya came back Sunday night full of stories about baking cookies with her grandmother and watching old Disney movies. I made her mac and cheese for dinner, helped her with a math worksheet, and tucked her into bed with her favorite stuffed elephant. Daddy, she said as I turned off the light. Is the new lady nice? I stopped in the doorway. What new lady? The one upstairs, Ava. Maya yawned, already half asleep. She seems sad. Why do you think she's sad? I don't know. My daughter rolled over, pulling her blanket up to her chin. She looks like you looked after Mommy left. That one hit harder than I expected. I closed her door gently and went to the living room, poured myself a drink I didn't really want, and stood at the window looking out at the darkened courtyard. Maya was perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes. And she wasn't wrong. Ava did look sad. Even when she smiled, even when she was making small talk about coffee shops or can openers, there was something hollow behind her eyes, something unfinished. I'd seen that look before. On families in the waiting room. On people who'd lost someone and didn't know how to stop looking for them. And I was starting to realize that maybe this wasn't about revenge. Maybe it was worse than that. Maybe she was still searching for a reason, an explanation, someone to tell her it hadn't been for nothing. The problem was, I didn't have one to give. The truth about that night was simple and brutal. Daniel Collins had been brought into the ER with injuries that were incompatible with life. Multiple organ damage, massive internal bleeding. By the time the paramedics got him to us, he was already circling the drain. We'd tried everything, transfusion, surgery, every protocol in the book. It hadn't mattered. Sometimes medicine couldn't save people. Sometimes the injuries were just too catastrophic. Sometimes you did everything right and the patient died anyway. That was the truth, but it wasn't the kind of truth that gave anyone peace. I finished my drink and was about to go to bed when there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Ava stood in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes red like she'd been crying. I can't do this anymore, she said. Do what? Pretend. Her voice cracked. Pretend I don't know who you are. Pretend I'm just some random neighbor who happened to move in here by accident. There it was. Finally. I stepped back. You want to come in? Yeah, she said. I do. We sat across from each other at my kitchen table. I'd made coffee neither of us drank. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic and distant sirens. How long have you known? I asked. That you lived here. About 6 months. I hired someone to find you. She stared at her untouched coffee. It wasn't hard. Your name was on the medical examiner's report. And you moved in here specifically to what? Watch me? To understand. She looked up and her eyes were fierce now, all the earlier pretense gone. To figure out if you were just some careless doctor who let my husband die or if you actually tried. The review board cleared me. I read the report. I know what it said. Her hands tightened around the coffee mug. But reports are just words. They don't tell me what happened in that room. They don't tell me if Daniel was scared, if he said anything, if there was even one moment where he could have been saved and you just missed it. There wasn't, I said quietly. How do you know? Because I've been over it 1,000 times in my head. Every decision, every second, there was no moment. The damage was too severe. He was 29 years old, she said, voice breaking. He was wearing his new jacket. We'd had dinner together 2 hours before the accident. He was fine, and then he wasn't, and I need to know why. He lost control of his motorcycle on I-93, struck a guardrail at approximately 70 miles per hour, sustained massive blunt force trauma to his chest and abdomen. By the time the paramedics stabilized him enough to transport, he'd already lost more than half his blood volume. I was using clinical language because it was easier than saying what I really remembered. The blood, the desperate attempts to clamp bleeding vessels that just kept tearing, the way his vitals had dropped despite everything we did. Was he conscious? Ava asked. When they brought him in? I hesitated. This was the part I'd never wanted to tell anyone. For about 30 seconds, I said finally, before we intubated him. What did he say? He asked for you. Ava's face crumpled. She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. What did you tell him? She whispered. I told him you were on your way, that we were going to take care of him, that he needed to stay with us. Did he understand? I don't know. He lost consciousness right after. She cried quietly for a minute while I sat there, useless, wishing I could offer her something more than the truth. I should have been there, she said finally. At the hospital. I should have been there when he woke up. He never woke up, Ava. After we intubated him, he never regained consciousness. But if I'd been there sooner, if I hadn't stopped to find parking, if I'd just run straight in, it wouldn't have changed anything. I leaned forward, trying to make her understand. You being there or not being there had no impact on his survival. The injuries were unsurvivable from the moment of impact. You can't know that. I do know that, because I've seen enough trauma cases to recognize when someone is savable and when they're not. Daniel wasn't savable, not by me, not by anyone. Then why did you keep trying, she demanded. Why not just let him go? Because that's not how medicine works. We don't give up just because the odds are bad. We fight until there's nothing left to fight for. And when did you know there was nothing left? I closed my eyes, seeing it again, the monitor flatlining, the senior resident looking at me, Rachel calling time of death. 23 minutes after he arrived, I said. That's when we called it. 23 minutes, she repeated. That's how long my husband had left. That's how long we tried. He was probably gone before the ambulance even arrived at the scene. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. I keep thinking about the last thing I said to him, she said. We'd had a stupid argument about whether to get a dog. I said he was never home enough to take care of one. He said I was being unfair. And then he left, and those were the last words we ever spoke to each other. He knew you loved him. Did he? She turned to face me. Because I'm not sure I knew at the end. I was so angry about the dog thing, so petty, and now he's dead and I can't take any of it back. I didn't know what to say to that. There were no words that would make it better. This is why I moved here, Ava said. Not to blame you, not to punish you. I just needed to see you as a real person, to understand if you were someone who cared or if Daniel was just another case to you. He wasn't just a case. No? No. I met her eyes. I think about him, about all of them, the ones I lose. You never forget faces like yours, the families in the waiting room, the way you looked at me when I came out to tell you. How did I look? Like I'd destroyed your entire world. You did, she said simply. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry you lost him. I'm sorry for everything you've been through. But I did my job that night. I did everything I could possibly do, and it wasn't enough. She sank back into the chair, all the fight going out of her. I know, she whispered. I know you did. I just needed to hear you say it. We sat in silence for a long time. The coffee went completely cold. Outside, the sirens faded. What happens now? I asked finally. I don't know. She looked exhausted, wrung out. I guess I find a new apartment. This was a bad idea. You don't have to leave. Yes, I do. This is too weird for both of us. She was right, but the idea of her leaving felt wrong somehow, like there was something unfinished here. For what it's worth, I said, I think Daniel would want you to forgive yourself. About the dog thing. About all of it. How would you know what he'd want? Because in those 30 seconds before he lost consciousness, he didn't ask about the accident. He didn't ask if he was going to die. He just asked for you. That tells me everything I need to know about how he felt. Fresh tears streamed down Ava's face. She nodded, unable to speak. She left a few minutes later. I watched her walk up the stairs to her apartment, heard her door close, and I sat there in my quiet kitchen, wondering if anything had really changed or if we'd just ripped open old wounds for nothing. Monday morning, I overslept. My alarm didn't go off. I must have dismissed it in my sleep, and I woke up at 7:15 with Maya shaking my shoulder, already dressed in mismatched socks and a shirt on backward, telling me the bus came at 7:30. I shot out of bed, threw on yesterday's jeans, got her breakfast into her hands while simultaneously brushing her hair into something resembling order. We ran out the door at 7:28. Ava was in the hallway, locking her apartment. She took one look at us, me half-dressed, Maya with syrup on her chin, and smiled. But this time it was different, real, no pretense. Rough morning? Late, I said shortly, ushering Maya toward the stairs. I'm walking that way, Ava said, falling into step beside us. Mind if I join you? I did mind, but couldn't say it without sounding like an ass, so I just nodded. We made it to the bus stop with 30 seconds to spare. Maya climbed on, waving at both of us through the window as the bus pulled away. Ava and I stood there on the empty sidewalk. She's a sweet kid, Ava said. Yeah. Must be hard doing it on your own. I glanced at her sharply. She wasn't looking at me. just watching the bus disappear down the street. Her mom's in the picture, I said. Just not locally. Still. Ava turned toward me and her expression was softer now, less guarded. Single parenting and a job like yours, that's a lot. We manage. I'm sure you do. She paused. You're good at managing, aren't you? Keeping things together even when they're falling apart. The words hung in the air between us, weighted with meaning I couldn't quite parse. What do you want from me, Ava? The question came out harsher than I intended, but I was tired of dancing around it, tired of pretending we were just neighbors making small talk. She blinked, something flickering across her face, surprise maybe, or relief that the pretense was finally dropping. I want to know why, she said simply. Why what? Why my husband died. There it was, out in the open. I took a breath, forced myself to stay calm. You know why? The hospital gave you the report, the medical examiner's findings. It was all... I read the reports, she interrupted. I know what they said. Internal bleeding, traumatic injury, complications from the crash. I know all of it. Then what? I want to hear it from you. Her voice cracked slightly. I want the person who was there, who tried to save him, to tell me if there was ever a moment when he could have survived. If you'd done something different, if the team had moved faster, if they'd brought him in 5 minutes earlier. There wasn't, I said flatly. She stared at me. There wasn't a moment, I continued, the words coming out rough and hard because I'd said them to myself 1,000 times in the 3 years since that night. Nothing would have changed the outcome. Not 5 minutes earlier, not a different surgeon, not a miracle. The damage was catastrophic. We did everything possible. You don't know that, she whispered. I do. I met her eyes, held her gaze. I know exactly that because I've gone over it in my head every day since it happened. Every decision, every second. And the answer is the same every time. He was gone before he ever reached us. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't look away. Then why do I feel like there's something missing? She asked. Why can't I believe it? I didn't have an answer for that. Grief didn't follow logic. It didn't care about medical reports or expert testimony or anything that made sense. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry you lost him. But moving here, watching me, asking these questions, it's not going to change what happened. I know, she said, her voice barely audible. I know it won't, but I had to try. But we stood there in the morning light, two broken people tied together by one terrible night, neither of us sure how to move forward. Finally, Ava wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I should go, she said. She turned and walked back toward the building, leaving me standing on the sidewalk alone. I called in sick to work. It was a coward's move, but I couldn't face the ER. Couldn't walk into that building and pretend the past wasn't clawing its way back into my present. Instead, I went home, sat on the couch, and stared at my phone for 2 hours before finally calling someone I hadn't talked to in months. Noah? Dr. Rachel Kim's voice was surprised. Everything okay? Rachel had been the attending that night. She'd been the one to call time of death on Daniel Collins while I stood there with blood on my gloves, watching his wife fall apart in the hallway. I need to ask you something, I said. About a patient from 3 years ago. Motorcycle accident, massive internal trauma. There was a pause. That's specific. Daniel Collins. Another pause, longer this time. Why are you asking about that case? His widow moved into my building. Shit, Rachel exhaled sharply. Is she harassing you? Because if she is, you need to document it. And no, I interrupted. It's not like that. She's just asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind I can't answer without reliving the worst night of my career. Rachel was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. Noah, you know there was nothing more we could have done. We went over this with the review board. The trauma was unsurvivable. I know. So what are you really asking me? I rubbed my eyes, feeling exhaustion settle into my bones. I'm asking if I'm crazy for feeling guilty when I know I shouldn't. You're not crazy, Rachel said. You're human. But you can't let this consume you again. You went through hell after that case. Took you months to stop second-guessing every call you made. I remembered. The nightmares, the panic attacks before shifts, the way I'd almost quit medicine entirely. She deserves answers, I said. Then give her the truth, Rachel replied. But don't let her guilt become yours. You did your job. He died anyway. Those two things aren't connected the way she needs them to be. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I sat there holding the phone, Rachel's words echoing in my head. Don't let her guilt become yours. Too late for that. I picked Maya up from the bus stop that afternoon and took her to the park. We spent 2 hours on the swings and the slide, her laughter cutting through the fog in my head, reminding me what actually mattered. When we got home, there was a note slipped under my door. I recognized the handwriting from the thank you card she'd left when I'd lent her the can opener. I'm sorry for this morning. I shouldn't have ambushed you like that. If you're willing to talk, I'll be home tonight. If not, I understand. Ava. I read it 3 times while Maya changed into her pajamas and started setting up her dolls for some elaborate game that involved a princess and a dragon. Daddy, you're not playing, she complained. Sorry, sweetie. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Just thinking? About what? Grown-up stuff. She made a face. Boring. Very boring, I agreed, sitting down on the floor beside her. Tell me about this dragon. Is he a good guy or a bad guy? He's complicated, Maya said seriously, which made me laugh despite everything. Fair enough. We played until dinner time. I made pasta, helped her with reading homework, and got her into bed by 8:30. Then I stood in my kitchen staring at the ceiling, knowing Ava was directly above me, probably waiting to see if I'd come up. I shouldn't. I should stay out of it, let her find closure somewhere else, protect the fragile equilibrium I'd built over the past 3 years. But Maya's voice echoed in my head. She looks like you looked after Mommy left. And Rachel's. Give her the truth. I went upstairs and knocked on her door. Ava answered almost immediately, like she'd been standing right there. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. We looked at each other for a moment. Can we talk? I asked. She stepped back, holding the door open. Yeah, we can talk. I walked into her apartment, smaller than mine, barely furnished, boxes still stacked against the walls, and wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But I sat down anyway, and we started talking. Ava's apartment looked like someone who hadn't fully committed to living there yet. The furniture was minimal, a couch that came with the place, a folding table, 2 mismatched chairs. Boxes were stacked against the far wall, most of them still taped shut. A single lamp in the corner cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. I sat on one of the chairs. She took the other. I don't know where to start, she said. Start anywhere. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisted together in her lap. After Daniel died, I went a little crazy. Not in an obvious way. I still went to work, paid my bills, showed up to things, but inside I was just screaming all the time, asking why, asking how, asking what I could have done differently. That's normal, I said. Grief does that. Is it normal to hire a private investigator to track down everyone who was in the ER that night? I blinked. You did that? Not at first. At first I just read the reports, over and over. The medical examiner's findings, the hospital's investigation, the insurance settlement, but they all said the same thing and none of it felt real. So I started digging deeper. And you found me. You were easy to find. Your name was on everything. Dr. Noah Bennett, attending ER physician. I looked you up on social media, found out you had a daughter, found out you were divorced, found out you lived in this building. That must have taken months. 6, she confirmed. 6 months of watching your Facebook posts, tracking your check-ins, piecing together your routine. I know that sounds insane. It sounds like someone who needed answers. I needed someone to blame, she corrected. That's what I thought I needed. Someone to point at and say, this is your fault. You killed him. But then I moved in here and I saw you with your daughter and I realized you were just human, tired, trying your best, just like everyone else. I didn't know what to say to that. The silence stretched between us. Do you want to know what really happened that night? I asked finally. All of it, not the sanitized version from the reports. She looked up, eyes sharp. Yes. I took a breath. This was going to hurt. For both of us. Daniel came in at 11:23 p.m. Paramedics had called ahead, so we knew it was bad. Motorcycle versus guardrail, high-speed impact. They'd already intubated him in the field because his airway was compromised. When they wheeled him in, he was barely maintaining a blood pressure. Ava listened without moving, barely breathing. We got him into trauma bay too. I was the lead physician, Rachel Kim was the attending, and we had 2 residents and 3 nurses. Standard trauma protocol. We cut off his clothes, got IV access, started transfusing blood. He was bleeding internally. We could tell from the abdominal distension and the way his pressure kept dropping despite the transfusions. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. Abdominal distension. It means his abdomen was filling with blood, usually from a ruptured organ or torn blood vessels. We did an ultrasound and confirmed massive internal bleeding. The only option at that point was emergency surgery. So why didn't you operate? We did. Rachel called the surgical team and we prepped to move him to the OR. But before we could get him upstairs, he crashed. His heart stopped. I could still see it. The monitor flatlining, the alarm screaming, everyone moving at once. We started CPR immediately. Chest compressions, drugs, the whole code protocol. But he wasn't responding. Every time we got a rhythm back, he'd crash again within seconds. The bleeding was too massive. We were essentially pumping blood into a body that couldn't hold it. How long did you try? 23 minutes. Standard protocol says you can call it after 15 if there's no response. But we kept going because he was young and healthy, and we thought maybe... I stopped. We thought maybe we could get him stable enough for surgery, but we couldn't. Ava's face was pale, but her eyes were dry. She'd cried all her tears already, probably. This was just information now, cold facts about the worst night of her life. Rachel called time of death at 11:47. I continued. I was the one who came out to tell you. You were in the waiting room with Daniel's brother. Do you remember? I remember screaming, she said. I remember you standing there in your scrubs with blood on them and telling me he was gone. I remember his brother having to hold me up because my legs stopped working. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Were you sorry then? Or did it feel like just another night? The question was sharp, but fair. I've never had a night where losing someone felt routine, I said. Every death stays with me. But Daniel's, that one was different. You were so young, both of you, and the way you looked at me like I'd personally failed you. I shook my head. I carried that for a long time. Good. The word hung in the air, harsh and honest. I wanted you to feel it, she continued. I wanted someone to suffer the way I was suffering. Is that terrible? It's human. I'm not sure those are different things. We sat with that for a moment. Can I ask you something? I said. Yeah. What did you think you'd find when you moved in here? What was the best case scenario? She considered this. I thought maybe I'd find out you were negligent, that you'd been drinking or distracted or just didn't care enough. Then I could hate you properly. Or I thought maybe I'd find out you were haunted by it, that you'd been destroyed by guilt, and that would somehow balance the scales. And instead I found a single dad who makes his kid breakfast and helps strangers with their groceries and clearly cares too much about everything. She smiled sadly. You're not supposed to be likable. You're supposed to be the villain. Sorry to disappoint. Don't apologize for being decent. It just makes this harder. What is this? She gestured vaguely at the space between us. This, whatever this is, me trying to figure out if I can forgive you for something that wasn't your fault. You trying to figure out if you need to be forgiven. I don't need your forgiveness, I said, and it came out sharper than I intended. I did my job. I did everything right. Your husband died because of the accident, not because of anything I did or didn't do. I know that, she said. Intellectually, I know that. But my heart doesn't care about logic. My heart just knows he's gone, and you were there, and maybe if I'd gotten to the hospital faster, or if traffic had been lighter, or if he'd left dinner 5 minutes later. Stop. I leaned forward. You can't live like that. You can't spend the rest of your life playing what if. It'll destroy you. Speaking from experience, I thought about my ex-wife, the fights, the divorce, the way I'd spent months afterward wondering if I could have saved the marriage if I just worked fewer hours, been more present, tried harder. Yeah, I said, speaking from experience. Ava stood abruptly and walked to the window. She stared out at the parking lot, arms wrapped around herself. I need to ask you something, she said without turning around, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay. If you could go back to that night, knowing everything you know now, could you save him? I'd asked myself that question 1,000 times. The answer never changed. No, I said. The injuries were unsurvivable. Even if we'd had a full surgical team waiting the moment he arrived, even if we'd gotten him to the OR in 5 minutes instead of the time it actually took, the outcome would have been the same. He'd lost too much blood. The damage to his organs was too extensive. There was no version of that night where Daniel Collins walked out of the hospital alive. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face now. Then why did he have to die at all? She asked, voice breaking. Why did he have to get on that motorcycle that night? Why did he have to take I-93 instead of surface streets? Why did he have to hit the guardrail at that exact angle? What was the point of any of it? I don't know, I said honestly. I don't have an answer for why bad things happen to good people. Nobody does. That's a terrible answer. I know, but it's the only one I have. She sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I sat there feeling useless. There was nothing I could say, nothing I could do to make this better. I'd failed to save her husband 3 years ago, and I was failing to help her now. Do you want me to leave? I asked quietly. No? Her voice was muffled. Stay, please. So I stayed. After a while, she stopped crying and just sat there, exhausted. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside. Tell me about Maya, she said finally. The subject change caught me off guard. What about her? How old is she? What's she like? She's 6, almost 7, smart, funny, talks too much. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, which changes every other week from astronaut to baker to princess. Princess is a career now? According to Maya, it is. Ava smiled a little. She looks like you. Poor kid. I mean it. She has your eyes, and the way she tilts her head when she's thinking, you do that too. I did do that. I'd never noticed. What about her mom? Ava asked. Jessica. We divorced 2 years ago. She's in California now with her new husband. Sees Maya on holidays and summers. That must be hard. It is what it is. Maya's happy. That's what matters. You're a good dad, Ava said. I can tell. I try. Do you ever worry you're not enough? That she needs more than just you? The question hit close to home. Every single day. But you keep showing up anyway. That's all any of us can do, right? Keep showing up, keep trying, hope it's enough. She nodded slowly. Daniel wanted kids. We were going to start trying the year he died. He would have been a good dad too. I'm sure he would have. Do you think about him, still? Yeah, not every day anymore, but yeah. What do you think about? I considered lying, softening it, but she'd asked for truth. I think about whether I could have done something differently. I think about the moment I had to tell you he was gone. I think about how young you both were. Sometimes I think about what his life would have looked like if he'd survived, if he'd had kids with you, if he'd grown old. He would have been terrible at growing old, Ava said with a small laugh. He was one of those guys who refused to act his age, still watched cartoons, still played video games, still thought he was invincible. The motorcycle. Yeah, the motorcycle. I hated that thing. We fought about it constantly. I told him it was dangerous, that he was going to get himself killed, and then you were right. I didn't want to be right. Her voice cracked again. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted him to prove me wrong for the rest of our lives. We sat in silence again. Outside, I heard footsteps in the hallway, someone coming home late. A door closed somewhere above us. What happens now? Ava asked. Do I move out? Do we just pretend this never happened? I don't know. What do you want? I want Daniel back, she said. But since I can't have that, I don't know what I want. Do you want answers? Because I can give you those. I can walk you through the medical records line by line. I can get you in touch with Rachel, with the other doctors who were there. I can show you everything we did and why we did it. Will that help? Probably not. But it might give you some peace, knowing there was nothing anyone could have done differently. She thought about this. Okay, yes, I want to see the records. I'll set it up. Thank you. She walked me to the door. We stood there awkwardly, neither of us sure how to end this. Noah, she said, I'm sorry for tracking you down, for moving in here, for making you relive all of this. Don't apologize. You needed answers. You deserved them. Still, this wasn't fair to you. Life's not fair. If it was, Daniel would still be alive. She nodded, tears welling up again. Yeah. I left her there and went back downstairs to my apartment. It was nearly midnight. Maya was asleep, her nightlight casting a soft glow through her cracked door. Everything was quiet and normal and exactly as I'd left it, but something had shifted. I couldn't name it yet, but I felt it. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from the hospital. My stomach dropped before I even listened to the voicemail. It was from HR asking me to come in as soon as possible. No details, just urgent. I dropped Maya at school early and drove to the hospital with my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, who I'd only met once during my onboarding, was waiting in her office with someone from legal. Dr. Bennett, thank you for coming in, Patricia said. Please, sit. I sat. The lawyer, a man in his 50s with graying hair and an expensive suit, didn't introduce himself. We've received a complaint, Patricia began carefully, from a former patient's family member. My blood went cold. Ava Collins. Patricia's eyebrows rose. You know about this? She's my neighbor. We've been talking. The lawyer leaned forward. What exactly have you been talking about? Her husband, Daniel Collins, the night he died. She had questions about his care. And you answered them? Yes. Did you provide her with medical records? No, I told her I would, but I haven't yet. Patricia and the lawyer exchanged looks. Dr. Bennett, the lawyer said, Mrs. Collins filed a formal complaint yesterday, alleging that you've been harassing her, following her, making unwanted contact. She claims she moved into your building by coincidence, and you've been inserting yourself into her life. I felt like I'd been punched. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? I explained everything. The way I'd recognized her, the encounters in the hallway, the confrontation, our conversation last night. As I talked, I watched Patricia's expression shift from concern to confusion to something like pity. So she approached you, Patricia said, not the other way around. Yes, she moved in deliberately. She hired an investigator to find me. Can you prove that? She told me herself. Did anyone else hear this conversation? I thought about it. No, we were alone in her apartment. The lawyer wrote something down. Dr. Bennett, without corroborating evidence, this becomes a he said, she said situation. And given that Mrs. Collins is a grieving widow and you were the physician who treated her deceased husband, I know how it looks, I interrupted. But I'm telling you the truth. She sought me out. Why would she do that and then file a complaint? Patricia asked. That was the question, wasn't it? Why would Ava lie? Unless she wasn't lying, unless her version of events was different from mine, unless she'd convinced herself that I was the aggressor, that I'd been the one pursuing her, or unless this was deliberate, a plan. Get me talking, get me emotional, get me invested, and then pull the rug out. I don't know, I said finally, but I didn't harass her. I helped her because she asked for help. We'll need to investigate this formally, the lawyer said. In the meantime, you're being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. What? I stood up. You're suspending me? It's temporary, Patricia said quickly. Just until we can sort this out. You'll still be paid, but you can't work clinical shifts or have any contact with Mrs. Collins. This is insane. This is protocol, the lawyer corrected. If the investigation clears you, you'll be reinstated immediately. But if we allow you to continue working while these allegations are pending and something happens, nothing's going to happen. We can't take that risk. I left the hospital in a daze, drove home on autopilot, sat in my car in the parking lot, and tried to process what had just happened. Ava had reported me. After everything we'd talked about, after I'd opened up to her, after I'd agreed to show her the medical records, she'd gone to the hospital and accused me of harassment. I needed to talk to her, needed to understand why, but I couldn't. They'd explicitly told me no contact. I pulled out my phone and stared at her number. One call, one text, just to ask what the hell she was thinking. But if I contacted her now, it would only make things worse. prove that I was harassing her. I put the phone away and went inside. Maya got home from school that afternoon, full of questions about why I was home early. I told her I had the day off, which wasn't technically a lie. We made cookies together, watched a movie, did her homework. She fell asleep on the couch halfway through a second movie, and I carried her to bed. Then I sat in the dark living room and tried to figure out my next move. There was a knock on the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Ava stood in the hallway, arms crossed, looking defensive. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm not supposed to have contact with you." "I know, I'm sorry, but I need to explain." "Explain what? Why you lied to the hospital?" "I didn't lie." "You said I was harassing you." "You were." I stared at her. "How?" "You kept pushing, kept asking questions, kept inserting yourself into my life. I didn't ask for that." "Yes, you did. You literally asked me to help you understand what happened to Daniel. I asked for information. I didn't ask for," she gestured vaguely, "for all of this. For you to look at me like I'm broken. For you to try to fix me." "I wasn't trying to fix you." "Yes, you were." Her voice rose. "You're a doctor. That's what you do. You see someone in pain and you try to make it better, but I'm not your patient, Noah. And you can't save me the way you couldn't save Daniel." The words hit like a slap. "So what was last night?" I asked. "What was all of that conversation, all those tears, all that honesty? Was it a setup?" "No." She looked away. "Last night was real. But then I woke up this morning and I realized how dangerous this was getting, for both of us. So I went to the hospital and told them I needed you to stop. You could have just told me that. Would you have listened?" I wanted to say yes, but I wasn't sure that was true. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's why I did it this way. Because I needed there to be consequences. I needed it to be official." "You got me suspended." She flinched. "I didn't mean for that to happen." "What did you think would happen?" "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just knew I needed distance, and I didn't know how else to get it." We stood there in the hallway, the space between us feeling like miles. "I thought we were making progress," I said quietly. "I thought you were finally getting closure." "That's the problem," she said. "I don't want closure. I want Daniel back. And when I'm with you, when we're talking about him, for just a moment it feels like he's still real, like he still matters. And then I remember that he's gone and you're alive, and it's not fair. Life's not fair. I know, but I needed someone to blame, and you were there." "So you blamed me?" "Yes." She met my eyes. "I blamed you, and I'm sorry, but I can't take it back now. Can you at least go back to the hospital and tell them the truth, that I didn't harass you?" She hesitated. "I'll think about it." "Ava, I said I'll think about it." She turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I do believe you did everything you could that night, and I'm sorry I made you question that." Then she was gone. I stood in the doorway for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. She'd apologized, sort of, but she'd also destroyed my career in the process, and she wasn't sure if she was going to fix it. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. "Heard about the suspension. Call me." I called. "What the hell happened?" Rachel asked without preamble. "She reported me for harassment." "Jesus, Noah, I warned you." "I know." "Did you harass her?" "No." But apparently my version of helping looked like harassment to her. Rachel was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Wait for the investigation to clear me, I guess. And if it doesn't, then I'm screwed. Noah, I know, Rachel. I know I should have listened to you. I know I should have stayed away. But she asked for help and I gave it to her, and now I'm paying the price." "I'll testify on your behalf," Rachel said. "If it comes to that. I was there that night. I know you did everything right." "Thank you. But Noah, you need to cut all contact with her. No more conversations. No more helping. Just stay away." "She came to my door tonight." "What?" "She apologized, sort of. But she also said she wasn't sure if she'd retract the complaint. That's manipulation." "I know. You need to protect yourself. Document everything. Every interaction, every conversation. If this goes to a formal hearing, you'll need evidence." "Okay." "I'm serious, Noah. This could end your career." "I know. I said again, feeling the weight of it. We hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling, listening to Maya's soft breathing from her bedroom. Everything I'd built, my career, my stability, my ability to provide for my daughter, was at risk because I'd tried to help someone who didn't want to be helped. Or maybe because I'd needed to help her, needed to prove that I'd done everything right that night, needed to be forgiven for something that wasn't my fault. Either way, I was in trouble. The next few days passed in a blur. I took Maya to school, picked her up, made dinner, helped with homework, tried to pretend everything was normal. She asked why I wasn't going to work, and I told her I was taking a vacation. She was thrilled. I didn't see Ava, didn't hear from her. It was like she'd disappeared. On the fourth day, I got a call from Patricia at HR. Dr. Bennett, I have good news. Mrs. Collins came in this morning and withdrew her complaint. Relief flooded through me. She did? Yes. She said there was a misunderstanding and that you hadn't done anything inappropriate. The investigation is closed and you're cleared to return to work. When? Whenever you're ready. Your next scheduled shift is Monday. Will that work? Yes. Thank you. Of course. And Dr. Bennett? In the future, if a patient's family member approaches you with questions, please direct them through official channels. It's for your protection as much as theirs. Understood. I hung up and sat there for a moment, processing. Ava had retracted it. She'd gone back and told them the truth. I should have felt vindicated, relieved. Instead, I just felt tired. That night, after Maya was in bed, there was another knock on my door. Ava again. I withdrew the complaint, she said without preamble. I heard. Thank you. You're welcome. She shifted her weight. And I'm sorry. For all of it. Why did you do it? Change your mind, I mean. Because it was wrong. And because... She paused. Because you were right. I was looking for someone to blame, and you were convenient, but you didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. I know. She looked at me, really looked at me. I'm going to move out, find a different apartment. I think that's best. Probably, I agreed. Before I go, though, I want you to know something. She took a breath. Talking to you, hearing about that night, seeing the medical records, it didn't give me closure, but it gave me something. Understanding, maybe. Or just proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I felt. You were never crazy. Grief makes you do crazy things. Yeah, it does. We stood there for a moment. I hope things work out for you, she said. You and Maya. You deserve good things. You too, I said. I hope you find what you're looking for. I don't think I'm looking anymore, she said quietly. I think I'm just trying to survive. That's enough. Sometimes that's all you can do. She nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. Goodbye, Noah. Goodbye, Ava. She turned and walked back to her apartment. I watched her go, knowing this was the last real conversation we'd ever have. And maybe that was for the best. I went back to work the following Monday. The ER felt different somehow. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. Every trauma case that came through the doors reminded me of Daniel Collins. Every grieving family member in the waiting room had Ava's face. Rachel pulled me aside during my first shift back. You okay? She asked. Fine. You don't look fine. I'm here, aren't I? I'm working. She studied me for a moment. The suspension hit you hard. It wasn't the suspension. I checked the board looking for my next patient. It was everything else. Has she moved out yet? I don't know. I haven't seen her. Good. Keep it that way. But I couldn't keep it that way because 3 days later, Maya came home from school and asked why the sad lady's apartment was empty. What do you mean empty? I asked. I saw through the window when I walked past. There's no furniture anymore. I should have felt relieved. Ava was gone. The chapter was closed. I could move on. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, after Maya was asleep, I went upstairs and looked through the window of 3B. Maya was right. The apartment was completely bare. No furniture, no boxes, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. She'd left without saying goodbye. Not that she owed me one. I went back downstairs and tried to convince myself this was better. Cleaner. No messy goodbyes, no lingering questions. Just gone. Except I kept finding myself listening for footsteps above my apartment, kept expecting to see her in the hallway or at the bus stop. The building felt emptier without her, which was ridiculous because I'd only known her for a few weeks. 2 weeks passed. Work consumed me in the way it always did when I needed distraction. I picked up extra shifts, stayed late, volunteered for the cases no one else wanted. Maya spent more time with her grandmother, who called me one evening with concern in her voice. "You're working too much again," she said. "I'm fine, Linda." That's what you said before the divorce, and before the breakdown after that motorcycle accident case. I didn't have a breakdown. You had something. Jessica told me you weren't sleeping, weren't eating, that you'd wake up in the middle of the night checking and rechecking medical journals. I'd forgotten that my ex-mother-in-law knew about Daniel Collins. Jessica must have told her during one of their phone calls back when we were still married. That was 3 years ago, I said. And now the widows moved into your building and filed a complaint against you, and suddenly you're working 60-hour weeks again. You see the pattern, right? I did see it. I just didn't want to admit it. I'm handling it, I said. Are you? Because Maya asked me yesterday if you were sad like the lady upstairs used to be sad. That stopped me. She said that? She's perceptive, Noah. She sees more than you think. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and tried to remember the last time I'd really talked to Maya about anything other than homework and dinner plans. She'd been quiet lately, I realized. Less chatty, more careful around me. I was failing her. Again. The next morning, I took the day off work and spent it entirely with Maya. We went to the aquarium, got ice cream, walked through the park. She lit up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. "This is fun, Daddy," she said, swinging my hand as we walked. "Can we do this more?" "Yes, sweetie, we can." "Promise?" "I promise." She smiled, gap-toothed and trusting, and I felt the weight of that promise settle on my shoulders. That evening, as I was tucking her into bed, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Did the sad lady leave because of us?" "What? No, honey. Why would you think that?" "I don't know. She seemed nice, and then she was gone. Like Mommy." I sat down on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. The sad lady, Ava, she had some things she needed to work through. It wasn't about you at all. Sometimes grown-ups need to go away to figure things out. "Did you make her sad?" "No, she was already sad when she got here." "Because her husband died?" I blinked. "How did you know that?" "I heard you and Grandma Linda talking once. You said a man died and his wife was really sad." I should have been more careful, should have known Maya was listening even when I thought she wasn't. "Yeah," I said. "Her husband died a while ago, and she's still trying to understand it." "Will she ever stop being sad?" "I think so. It just takes time." "Like how you stopped being sad about Mommy?" I hadn't stopped being sad about Jessica, exactly. I'd just learned to carry it differently. "Something like that," I said. Maya nodded, satisfied with this answer, and rolled over to go to sleep. I sat there for a while longer, watching her breathe, thinking about all the ways we carry our losses with us. A month went by, then 2. The building got a new tenant in 3B, a graduate student who kept to himself and played music too loud on weekends. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal. I stopped working such long hours, made more time for Maya, started sleeping through the night again. The nightmares about Daniel Collins faded, replaced by the usual ER stress dreams about missing critical symptoms or showing up to work naked. Rachel noticed the change. "You seem better," she said one shift. "I am better." "Good. You had me worried for a while." I had me worried too. We were in the break room, grabbing coffee between patients, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Ava. I know I shouldn't contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm doing okay. I started therapy. It's helping. I hope you're well." I stared at the message for a long time. "Everything okay?" Rachel asked. "Yeah, just someone I used to know." I typed back, "Glad to hear it. Take care of yourself." Her response came quickly. "You too." "And Noah? Thank you for everything." I put the phone away and didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. But 2 days later, she texted again. "Can we talk? In person? There's something I need to tell you." I should have said no. Should have blocked the number and moved on with my life. Instead, I found myself typing, "When and where? The coffee shop on Maple, tomorrow at 2? I'll be there." I told myself I was just being polite, giving her closure. But the truth was, I wanted to see her, needed to know she was really okay. Needed to see for myself that this story had a decent ending. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. She looked different, lighter, somehow. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She smiled when she saw me, and it reached her eyes this time. "Hi," she said, as I slid into the seat across from her. "Hi, thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I almost didn't. That would have been fair. She pushed one of the coffees toward me. "Black, right? That's how you took it at the hospital that day." I was surprised she remembered. "Yeah, thanks." We sat in awkward silence for a moment. "You look good," I said finally. "Different. I feel different. It's been hard, but good hard, if that makes sense." It does. I've been working through a lot of the stuff we talked about. The guilt, the blame, the what-ifs. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "My therapist helped me see that I was using you as a stand-in for all the anger I couldn't direct at Daniel. Because you can't be angry at someone who died." "Exactly. It felt wrong to be mad at him for getting on that motorcycle, for dying, for leaving me. So I redirected it at you instead." "I get it. Do you?" "Because I'm not sure I would. I put you through hell, Noah. The complaint, the suspension, all of it. You had every right to hate me." "I didn't hate you. I didn't understand." "I didn't understand either. That was the problem." She took a sip of coffee. "But I'm starting to now. And I wanted to apologize properly. Not the half-assed version I gave you before I left." "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." She met my eyes. "You tried to help me and I weaponized it against you. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." The apology sat between us, genuine and complete. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that. There's something else I need to tell you." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I wrote this a few weeks ago, but I wasn't sure if I should send it. My therapist said I should, so here." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "What is it?" "A letter. To the hospital. Detailing everything that happened that night with Daniel from my perspective as a witness. I sent a copy to the chief of emergency medicine. I wanted them to know that you did everything possible. That the care was exemplary. That if there was any failure, it was in the universe, not in your hands." I felt something tight in my chest loosen. "Ava, you don't need to say anything. I just needed you to know that it's on record now. If anyone ever questions your competence or your decisions that night, there's documentation from the family stating otherwise." "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the truth, and because you deserve to have it acknowledged." She paused. "And maybe because I needed to do something good after doing so much damage." We talked for another hour. She told me about her therapy, about the progress she was making, about how she'd started volunteering at a grief support group. I told her about Maya, about work, about the strange emptiness her absence had left in the building. "I didn't think you'd notice I was gone," she admitted. "Of course I noticed. I thought you'd be relieved." "I was. And I wasn't. It's complicated." She smiled sadly. "Everything about this has been complicated." As we were getting ready to leave, she asked one more question. "Do you think we would have been friends if we'd met under different circumstances?" I thought about it. "Maybe. You're smart, you're tough. You don't take easy answers. Those are qualities I respect. But the circumstances matter. We're always going to be tied to that night, to Daniel. And I'm not sure we can build something healthy on that foundation." "No," she agreed. "Probably not." We stood outside the coffee shop, the afternoon sun bright, and almost too cheerful for the conversation we were having. "This is goodbye then," she said. "For real this time?" "Yeah, I think it has to be. Take care of yourself, Noah, and take care of Maya. She's lucky to have you." "Take care of yourself too." She hugged me, quick and fierce, and then she was walking away down the sidewalk. I watched until she turned the corner and disappeared. When I got home, Maya was at her grandmother's, so the apartment was quiet. I sat on the couch and opened the envelope Ava had given me. Inside was a copy of the letter she'd sent to the hospital. It was 3 pages long, typed and formal. She detailed every moment of that night from her perspective in the waiting room, praised the nursing staff for their compassion, the residents for their urgency, Rachel for her clear communication, and then a full paragraph about me. About how I'd been the one to update her every 15 minutes, how I'd explained things in terms she could understand, how I'd sat with her after Daniel died and answered every question without rushing her, how I'd treated her husband with dignity even in death. She ended the letter with a statement that would have made a lawyer proud. Dr. Noah Bennett provided exemplary medical care under the most difficult circumstances. Any investigation that questions his competence or his decisions that night would be unfounded and unjust. My husband received the best possible care. That he died anyway is a tragedy, but it is not a failure of medicine or of the physicians who tried to save him. I read it 3 times, feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Absolution. Not because I'd needed it from her, necessarily, but because having it meant I could finally stop asking myself the same questions over and over. That evening, I picked Maya up from her grandmother's and we made dinner together. She chattered about her day, about a boy at school who'd put a frog in the teacher's desk, about how she'd gotten 100% on her spelling test. "Daddy, you're smiling," she observed. "I am? Yeah, you look happy." "I guess I am happy." "Good. You should be happy more." "I'll work on that, sweetie." Later, after she was in bed, I sat at my desk and pulled out the records from Daniel Collins's case. I'd kept them in a file folder in my drawer, unable to let them go, but unable to look at them either. I read through them one more time, every notation, every timestamp, every decision, and for the first time I didn't see mistakes or missed opportunities. I just saw doctors trying their best in an impossible situation. I closed the folder and put it away. Not in the drawer this time, but in a box in the closet, filed away properly. Finished. The next few months passed quietly. Work continued. Maya grew. The seasons changed. I started dating someone from the hospital, a nurse named Claire who was funny and uncomplicated and had no connection to my past. It didn't last, but it was nice while it did. A reminder that life moved forward whether you were ready or not. Rachel invited me to her wedding that spring. I went with Maya, who was thrilled to wear a fancy dress and eat too much cake. During the reception, Rachel pulled me aside. "You seem different," she said. "Lighter?" "I feel lighter." "The Collins case?" "Yeah. I think I finally let it go." "Good. It was eating you alive." "I know." She squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, for surviving it, for coming out the other side." I had help. We all need help sometimes. The trick is accepting it. I thought about Ava, wherever she was now, about how we'd helped each other in the strangest, most painful way possible, about how sometimes closure doesn't look like you expect it to. Maya tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, can we dance?" "Of course, sweetie." We danced, my daughter and I, surrounded by celebration and hope, and the promise of new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the future might actually hold good things. A year after Ava moved out, I got one more message from her. It was brief. "I'm engaged, moving to Seattle, starting over. Thank you for being part of my healing, even when it was messy. I hope you're well." I smiled and typed back, "Congratulations. I'm happy for you." And I was. Genuinely happy that she'd found a way forward. That grief hadn't swallowed her whole. That Daniel's death, however tragic, hadn't been the end of her story. Her response came a few minutes later. "Maya's lucky to have you. Don't forget that." "I won't." I put the phone down and looked around my apartment, at Maya's drawings on the refrigerator, at the puzzle we'd half finished on the coffee table, at the medical journals I'd actually been reading instead of using as props for my guilt. This was my life. Imperfect, sometimes messy, but mine. And it was enough. The following week I had a trauma case that reminded me eerily of Daniel Collins. Young man, motorcycle accident, massive internal injuries. The family was in the waiting room, terrified and desperate. This time, I didn't freeze, didn't second guess. I did my job with the clarity that comes from having already fought and lost this battle before. We saved him. Barely, but we saved him. When I went out to tell the family, the girlfriend collapsed in relief, sobbing. I stood there and let her cry. remembering Ava's tears in that same waiting room 3 years earlier. "Thank you," the girlfriend kept saying. "Thank you, thank you." "He's not out of the woods yet," I cautioned, "but he's stable. That's a good sign." "Can I see him?" "Soon. We're getting him set up in the ICU. Someone will come get you when he's ready for visitors." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I don't know what I would have done if—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "But you don't have to," I said gently. He made it. Unlike Daniel. Unlike all the others we'd lost. But this one made it, and that had to count for something. I went home that night feeling like I'd closed one more door on the past. Maya was already asleep when I got there, so I just stood in her doorway and watched her breathe for a while. Tomorrow I'd take her to the park, make her pancakes for breakfast, help her with her science project, show up for all the small moments that made up a life. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a Hollywood ending with violins and sunset shots. It was just life, continuing, one day at a time. And after everything, that felt like enough. 6 months later, Maya and I moved to a different apartment across town, closer to her school, closer to my work. A fresh start in a building with no ghosts in the hallways. On moving day, as the movers were loading the last boxes, I found myself looking back at the old building one more time. Ava had lived right above us for just a few weeks, but it felt like longer. Like those weeks had contained years' worth of pain and growth and understanding. I'd never forget her. Never forget Daniel. But I could finally think about both of them without the crushing weight of guilt. Maya tugged on my hand. "Come on, Daddy. Let's go see the new place." "Okay, sweetie. Let's go." We drove to the new apartment through the bright autumn afternoon. Maya sang along to the radio, off-key and enthusiastic. I thought about all the things that could have gone differently in my life. The choices I'd made, the chances I'd taken, the people I'd failed to save. But I also thought about the things that had gone right. Maya, my career, the second chances I'd been given even when I didn't deserve them. Life was messy and complicated and unfair. People died who shouldn't. Others survived against impossible odds. And sometimes the only thing you could do was keep moving forward and hope you did more good than harm along the way. That night, in our new apartment, Maya and I ordered pizza and ate it on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes. She fell asleep early, exhausted from the excitement of moving. I carried her to her new room and tucked her in. Then I stood at the window of my new living room and looked out at a city full of people carrying their own losses, their own regrets, their own small triumphs. Somewhere out there, Ava was building a new life with someone who didn't carry the shadow of her dead husband. Somewhere, Rachel was happy with her new spouse. Somewhere, there were patients I'd saved who were going home to their families. And here, in this apartment, my daughter was sleeping peacefully, trusting that I'd be here when she woke up. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for when I'd imagined my life years ago, but it was real, and it was mine, and I'd fought hard to keep it. That had to mean something. I pulled out my phone and deleted Ava's number, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. That chapter was closed. Whatever came next would be something different. I went to bed that night in my new apartment and slept through until morning without nightmares. It felt like a new beginning. The new apartment never quite felt like home, but Maya adjusted faster than I did. She made friends with the kid next door, a boy named Marcus who was obsessed with dinosaurs, and shared Maya's enthusiasm for basically everything. I'd hear them through the walls sometimes, laughing over some game only they understood. 6 months in the new place, and I still found myself listening for footsteps from the apartment above, expecting to hear Ava moving furniture or playing music. But it was just an elderly couple up there who went to bed at 8 and never made a sound. Work became easier, not because the cases were any less intense, but because I'd stopped carrying them home. When I lost a patient now, I grieved it in the moment and then let it go. When I saved one, I allowed myself to feel good about it without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Rachel noticed. "You're different," she said one shift. "It's like you finally figured out how to be a doctor without destroying yourself in the process." "I'm trying." "Well, it's working. The residents have been asking me if they can work with you more. Apparently you're actually teaching them instead of just barking orders." I hadn't realized I'd been that bad before. Or maybe I had and just hadn't cared enough to change. "The Ava thing really changed you, didn't it?" Rachel asked. "Yeah, it did." "For better or worse?" I thought about it. "Both. It broke something open that needed to be broken, forced me to look at things I'd been avoiding. Like? Like the fact that I was using guilt as a way to feel important. Like I mattered more if I carried the weight of every patient I couldn't save. Like suffering made me a better doctor. And now? Now I think suffering just makes you suffer. Being a good doctor means showing up, doing your best, and accepting that medicine has limits. Rachel smiled. Look at you, being emotionally mature. Don't get used to it. I'm sure I'll backslide any day now. But I didn't backslide. If anything, the clarity kept building. I started sleeping better, eating regular meals, taking Maya on weekend trips to the beach, or the mountains, or wherever she wanted to explore. She asked about Ava one more time, about 8 months after we'd moved. Do you think the sad lady is happy now? She asked out of nowhere during dinner. I hope so, sweetie. Why? I was just thinking about her. She seemed really lonely. She was. But sometimes people need to be lonely for a while before they can figure out how to be happy again. Like you after Mommy left? The comparison stung, but it wasn't wrong. Yeah, like me after Mommy left. But you're not lonely anymore, right? No, baby, I'm not lonely. I have you. She smiled, satisfied, and went back to her spaghetti. But the conversation stayed with me. Was I still lonely? In some ways, yes. I missed adult companionship, missed having someone to talk to after Maya went to bed. But it was a different kind of lonely than before. A loneliness I could live with, rather than one that consumed me. A year after moving, I ran into someone from my past in the hospital cafeteria. Tom Bradley, Daniel Collins' brother. I recognized him immediately, even though I'd only seen him once, that terrible night in the waiting room. He recognized me too. Dr. Bennett? He said, approaching my table. I stood, instinctively defensive. Tom, how are you? I'm good, actually. Can I talk to you for a minute? Sure. He sat down across from me, looking nervous. He'd aged since that night, or maybe it was just that I'd only seen him in crisis. He looked more put together now, wearing a suit like he'd come from work. I wanted to thank you, he said, for what you did for Daniel that night. I hadn't expected that. I didn't save him. I know, but Ava told me about the letter she wrote to the hospital, about how hard you all tried. I never got to say this 3 years ago because I was too angry, but you did everything you could. I know that now. Thank you. That means a lot. Ava's doing well, by the way. She got married last month. Seems happy. I heard. I'm glad. She said you helped her. With the grief, I mean. The talking to you gave her closure. I think we helped each other. Tom nodded. Daniel would have liked that. He always said the best thing you could do for people was show up honestly, even when it's hard. He sounds like he was a good person. He was. Reckless as hell with that motorcycle, but good. Tom smiled sadly. I still miss him every day, but it doesn't hurt the same way it used to. Time does that. It's not just time, though. It's acceptance. Ava helped me see that. She said you taught her that some things just are. They don't have reasons or explanations, they just are. We talked for a few more minutes before Tom had to leave. As he stood to go, he shook my hand. Take care of yourself, Dr. Bennett, and thank you. Really. After he left, I sat there with my cold coffee, thinking about how strange it was that tragedy could connect people in ways nothing else did. Tom and I would probably never see each other again, but we'd always have that shared understanding of loss. That evening, I took Maya to the playground near our apartment. She ran off to play with Marcus while I sat on a bench watching. A woman sat down next to me. Mid-30s, tired-looking, watching a little girl on the swings. Yours? She asked, nodding toward Maya. Yeah, the one climbing too high on the monkey bars. Mine's the one who thinks she can swing high enough to touch the sky. We sat in companionable silence for a while. Single parent? She asked. Yeah, divorced. You? Widow. The word hung in the air between us. I'm sorry, I said. Thanks. It's been 2 years, still weird saying it out loud. How old was your daughter when it happened? 3. She barely remembers him now. I don't know if that's better or worse. I thought about Maya, about how she was starting to forget the details of life with her mother, the sound of Jessica's voice, the way she used to do Maya's hair. I think it's just different, I said. Not better or worse, just different. The woman smiled slightly. That's a diplomatic answer. I'm a doctor. Diplomacy is part of the job. What kind? ER physician. So you see the worst of everything. Pretty much. And you still show up every day? Someone has to. She nodded, watching her daughter swing. My husband was in an accident, car versus semi-truck. The doctors tried everything, but I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry, but sorry doesn't bring him back. She paused. Sorry, that came out harsh. It's okay. You're right. Sorry doesn't fix anything. No, but sometimes it's all people have to offer. We sat there until our kids got tired and hungry. As we were leaving, she turned to me. I'm Emily, by the way. Noah? Maybe we'll see each other here again sometime. Yeah, maybe. I didn't expect to see her again, but 2 days later she was back at the playground with her daughter, and then again the following week. It became a pattern. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, we'd bring our kids to play while we sat on the bench and talked about nothing important. She never asked about my work in detail, and I never pressed her about her husband. We just existed in each other's orbit, two people who understood loss without needing to explain it. Maya liked Emily's daughter, Sophie. They played together with the unselfconscious joy of small children who haven't learned to be guarded yet. Is Emily your girlfriend? Maya asked one night. No, sweetie, she's just a friend. But you smile when you talk to her? I smile when I talk to lots of people. Not like that, you don't. I didn't have a response to that. The truth was, I did like Emily. She was smart and funny and didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. But I wasn't ready for more than friendship, and I had the feeling she wasn't either. We were just two people keeping each other company while we figured out how to live in the wreckage of our old lives. One Thursday, Emily brought coffee for both of us. I did something today, she said as she handed me a cup. What's that? I sold his car. David's car. I'd been keeping it in the garage for 2 years like some kind of shrine. Today I finally called a dealer and got rid of it. How do you feel? Lighter, and guilty for feeling lighter. That's normal. Is it? Because it feels like I'm erasing him. I thought about the file folder I'd moved from my desk drawer to a box in the closet, about deleting Ava's number, about all the small ways we let go of the dead. You're not erasing him, I said. You're just making room for yourself to keep living. There's a difference. You sound like my therapist. Good. Then you're paying someone to tell you the same thing I'm telling you for free. She laughed. Fair point. Sophie ran over, breathless and grinning. Mom, can Maya come over for a play date? Emily looked at me. Would that be okay? Yeah, sure. When were you thinking? This weekend, Saturday afternoon? That works? As we were packing up to leave, Emily touched my arm. Thank you, she said. For what? For not trying to fix me, for just being here. Same to you. The play date went well. Maya and Sophie disappeared into Sophie's room and played for 3 hours while Emily and I sat in her living room drinking tea and talking. Her house still had traces of her dead husband everywhere. Photos on the walls, his books on the shelves, a jacket hanging by the door that she probably couldn't bring herself to move. Does it bother you? She asked, noticing me looking at the photos. Being surrounded by him? No, it's your house, your memories. Most people who come over get uncomfortable, like they don't know how to act around the ghost in the room. I work in an ER. I'm comfortable with ghosts. She smiled. Is that what you tell yourself? What do you mean? You carry them too. I can see it. The patients you couldn't save, the ones who haunt you. I didn't deny it. There was one in particular, 3 years ago, motorcycle accident. I couldn't stop the bleeding. And you blamed yourself? For a long time, yeah. His family blamed you? His widow did. She moved into my building, actually. Spent weeks trying to figure out if I'd been negligent. Emily's eyes widened. Wow. What happened? We talked. A lot. She got closure. I got absolution. We both moved on. Just like that? No, not just like that. It was messy and painful and nearly cost me my career, but eventually, yeah. We both found a way forward. Do you still think about him, the patient? Sometimes, but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Now it's just part of my story. a thing that happened that shaped who I became. Emily was quiet for a moment. I want that. To get to the place where David's death is just part of my story instead of the whole story. You'll get there. How do you know? Because you're already doing the work. Selling the car, going to therapy, letting Sophie have playdates with new friends. Those are all steps forward. They feel like betrayals. I know, but they're not. They're survival. She nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. I hope you're right. Over the next few months, Emily and I became closer. Not romantically, we'd both been clear about that, but as genuine friends who understood each other's grief. We had dinner together sometimes, the four of us, with Maya and Sophie chattering away while Emily and I traded stories about work and parenting and the small victories of getting through another day. Maya loved it. She loved having Sophie as a friend, loved the routine of our Thursday playground visits and Saturday playdates. She loved Emily too, I could tell. Is Emily going to be my new mom? She asked one night. No, sweetie. Emily's just our friend. But you like her. I do like her, but liking someone doesn't mean you marry them. Why not? Because life's more complicated than that. Grown-ups always say that. Because it's true. She made a face but didn't argue further. The truth was, I'd thought about it, about whether Emily and I could be more than friends, whether our shared understanding of loss could be a foundation for something else. But every time I considered it, I thought about Ava, about how we'd been tied together by trauma and how that had nearly destroyed both of us. Emily and I worked as friends because we didn't need anything from each other except companionship. Adding romance would change that equation, would add expectations and needs that neither of us was ready to fulfill. So we stayed friends, and it was enough. 2 years after Ava moved out, I got a letter in the mail. Real mail, not email. Handwritten address, Seattle postmark. I opened it carefully. Dear Noah, I'm writing to you from my new life in Seattle. I'm married now. His name is James, and he's nothing like Daniel, which I think is exactly what I needed. We're expecting a baby in the fall, a girl. I'm terrified and excited and still sometimes can't believe this is real. I wanted to write to thank you again for everything you did, both for Daniel and for me. I know I already said this, but I don't think I said it right. You gave me permission to be angry and hurt and messy. You didn't try to fix me or make it better. You just told me the truth over and over until I could finally hear it. The truth was Daniel died because of the accident, not because of you. The truth was I was looking for someone to blame because blame felt better than accepting randomness. The truth was I needed to forgive myself for surviving more than I needed to forgive you for anything. I hope you're well. I hope Maya is thriving. I hope you've forgiven yourself too for whatever it is you're still carrying. Thank you for being part of my healing, even when neither of us knew that's what was happening. With gratitude, Ava Sade, gratitude, Ava. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in the box with Daniel's medical records. Another piece of the past filed away. That night I called Emily. Random question, I said when she answered. Do you think people can heal from grief without fixing it? What do you mean? Like, do you have to resolve it completely, or can you just learn to carry it differently? She was quiet for a moment. I think healing looks different for everyone. For me, it's not about fixing the grief. It's about finding ways to live alongside it. Some days are harder than others, but the hard days don't swallow me whole anymore. Yeah, that's kind of what I think too. Why are you asking? Just thinking about the past, about the patients I lost, about how I used to think I needed to make sense of it all. And now, I think some things don't make sense. They just are. And our job is to figure out how to keep living anyway. That's very zen of you. I have my moments, she laughed. Want to bring Maya over this weekend? I'm making lasagna and Sophie's been asking about her. Yeah, that sounds good. We hung up and I sat there thinking about how strange life was. 3 years ago, I'd been drowning in guilt and insomnia. Now I had friends, a daughter who was happy, a career I could feel good about. It wasn't perfect. I still had bad days, still woke up sometimes from dreams about codes I couldn't stop and patients I couldn't save. Still wondered if I was doing right by Maya, if I was present enough, patient enough, good enough. But the difference was, I didn't let those doubts consume me anymore. I felt them, acknowledged them, and kept moving forward. That Saturday, Maya and I went to Emily's house. Sophie answered the door in a princess costume, already talking a mile a minute about the fort they were going to build. Maya grinned and ran inside with her. Emily met me at the door with a glass of wine. "You look tired," she observed. "Long week, bad case on Wednesday, lost a kid." "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." I took a sip of wine. "But I'm okay. It's hard, but I'm okay." That's growth. That's therapy and 3 years of learning to let go. We sat in her kitchen while the girls played upstairs. The lasagna was in the oven, filling the house with the smell of garlic and cheese. It felt domestic and normal, and nothing like the chaotic grief that had defined both our lives not that long ago. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said. "Sure." "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Do you?" "I used to think no, that David was it for me. But lately I've been thinking maybe there's room for something else. Not a replacement, but something different." "You thinking about someone specific?" She smiled. "There's a guy at work. He asked me out for coffee." "And?" And I said yes. "We're going next week." "That's great, Em." "Is it? Because I feel guilty as hell about it." "Of course you do. That's normal. But guilt doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it just means you're doing something new." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just exhausted enough to stop fighting reality." She laughed. "I'll take it." The girls came downstairs demanding dinner. We ate together, the four of us, and it felt like family even though it wasn't. It felt like people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new from the pieces. After dinner, Maya and I drove home through the dark streets. She fell asleep in the back seat, and I carried her up to our apartment and tucked her into bed. Then I stood at my living room window, looking out at the city, thinking about all the ways life had changed in 3 years. Ava was married and pregnant in Seattle. Tom had found his own peace with Daniel's death. Emily was going on dates. Rachel was happy in her marriage. And I was here, standing in an apartment that finally felt like home, with a daughter sleeping safely in the next room. We'd all survived. Not perfectly, not without scars, but we'd survived. And maybe that was the point. Not to fix everything or make it all make sense, but just to keep going, to show up for the people who needed you, to let go of the things you couldn't change, to forgive yourself for being human. I thought about Daniel Collins and all the patients I'd lost over the years. I thought about the ones I'd saved. I thought about Maya and the life we were building together. I thought about Emily and Sophie and the unexpected friendships that had grown from shared grief. And I realized something. Healing wasn't about forgetting or moving on or finding closure. It was about learning to hold the pain and the joy at the same time. About understanding that you could grieve what you lost and still celebrate what you had. The dead didn't need my guilt. They needed to be remembered with honesty, for who they were, not for who I wished I could have saved them to be. And the living needed me to show up fully, without the weight of ghosts pulling me backward. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos of Maya from earlier that evening. Her laughing with Sophie, her covered in lasagna sauce, her asleep in the car with her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. This was what mattered. Not the patients I couldn't save, or the marriages that didn't work, or the grief that still surfaced sometimes when I least expected it. This, right here. This messy, imperfect, beautiful life. I put the phone away and went to bed, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep without thinking about what I'd done wrong or what I should have done differently. I just slept, and when I woke up in the morning to Maya jumping on my bed demanding pancakes, I made them. Badly, with too much syrup and not enough butter, but she didn't care. She ate them grinning, telling me about a dream she'd had where she and Sophie were astronauts exploring a planet made of chocolate. That sounds amazing, sweetie. It was. You were there too. I was? Yeah, you were the captain of the ship. You kept us safe. Something about that made my throat tight. I'll always try to keep you safe, Maya. I know, Daddy. She reached across the table and patted my hand with her sticky fingers. You're good at it. After breakfast, we went to the park. Not the playground where I met Emily, but a different one, farther from the apartment. We walked around the pond feeding ducks, Maya chattering about everything and nothing. I thought about the letter from Ava, about her new baby on the way, about how life had this strange way of continuing even when you thought it couldn't. "Daddy, look!" Maya pointed at something in the water. I looked. It was just a turtle, sunning itself on a rock. "Cool, right?" she said. "Very cool." We stood there watching the turtle for a while, and I felt something settle in my chest, a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. This was enough. This moment, this daughter, this ordinary Sunday morning. It was more than enough. It was everything.